My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, trials and calamities, problems and suffering, pain and disaster brings about different reactions from different people. And one of my most memorable moments of my own life, one of the most moments that I will always remember, 10 years ago, I went on a delegation of American imams to tour the Nazi concentration camps of Auschwitz and Dachau, where, as you know, millions of people were executed in a short period of time. And as a part of the official delegation, because we were coming at a very high level, we managed, Allah Azza wa Jal blessed us really to meet some of the survivors of Auschwitz and Dachau. They have gone now, this is 10 years ago. These were 90-year-old, 89, 90, 92-year-old. We met 3 of them, one after the other in different cities. And it truly was a very amazing sight to hear the stories of the people who had survived those concentration camps. And we saw the tattoos on their arms. He pulled up his sleeve, he showed us that tattoo. He mentioned what had happened. And there was one gentleman, I'll never forget, who was very severely, obviously, tortured. 3-4 years he was there. And he was of a Jewish background. And I asked him, at the end of his presentation, I said, how has that tragedy affected your faith? What has it caused you to do with your religion? And his face became bitter and angry. And he said, I am no longer a Jew. I'm no longer a believer in God. Because, this is what he said, because if there were a God, then what happened to me would not happen. And I felt double pain for him. A pain that he had gone through so much. A pain that he had been tortured and persecuted. And then a sense of pity as well. That suffering had caused him to basically become an atheist and to end up rejecting God. And in fact, he went more than this, and his words were too harsh to repeat on a khutbah. You can imagine the anger that he felt. He took it out on his Creator, and he simply rejected Him. And subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran that this is something that happens. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. There are those people who worship Allah with a condition. There's a conditional worship of Allah. فَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ. If life is good, he's happy, and he'll be happy with Allah. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ فِتْنَةٌ انقلب على وجهه خسر الدنيا والآخرة ذلك هو الخسران المبين. But if life is not good, if a fitna happens, then he flips around and he switches his faith in Allah Azza wa Jal, and he ends up losing this world and the next, and that is the ultimate loss. And my dear brothers and sisters, the wisdom of trying to understand the problems of this world, the rationalization that we as humans are struggling with. Why is there so much bloodshed, misery, pain, torture, persecution? How can we understand innocents dying around the world all the time through diseases, through plagues, through sicknesses, through civil war, through tragedies? Some of them we call them acts of God, like the floods and the tsunamis and the earthquakes. And some of them we call acts of men and acts of civil war, as what is happening in Syria, in Burma, in Kashmir, and all of these lands. This rationalization that we try to do as human beings, as Muslims, as believers, is something that every faith tradition has struggled with. It is one of the fundamental problems of theology. When you study theology in any discipline, in any background, from any religion, their philosophers and theologians are trying to answer, how can we reconcile the belief in God with the suffering of human beings? Why does Allah or God or any entity that the religion believes in allow this to take place? And each religion has its answers, each philosophy, each tradition. And it is impossible for us humans to fully comprehend Because in the Quran we learn that this question of evil, this question of suffering, is not something that the philosophers began. It doesn't go back to Socrates and Plato. It doesn't go back to the ancient Greeks. It goes back to even before the beginning of the creation of man. The question of trying to understand why is there pain? Why is there suffering? Why is there bloodshed and evil? This is a question that was asked of Allah even before Allah created us. We all learn in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announced to the creation, He announced to the angels, He announced to the worlds before us, that I am creating a new creation called man. And instantaneously the angels asked Allah. The angels, when man was described and when the effects of man were understood, even before man came down to this earth and actually did anything, the angels questioned, قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. Why would you do that? This is a question that is not challenging Allah's authority. It is trying to comprehend Allah's wisdom. Even the angels asked the same question. Why would you create a new creation who's going to cause fitna and fasad, who's going to shed blood? They're going to kill one another. Innocent people will die. Why would you cause this pain and suffering when we are here so pure, so holy, praising you all the time? نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. We're worshipping you 24/7. We're never disobeying you. We don't cause any bloodshed. We don't cause any civil war. There's no pain and misery and suffering in the world of the angels. Why would you do that, O Allah? And again, they're not challenging Allah's power. They're trying to understand Allah's wisdom. And the angels, generally speaking, are more intelligent than us. And the angels are purer than us and holier than us. What response did Allah give to those angels? Allah did not rationalize the existence of evil. His answer was not an answer that we would call an attempt to philosophize, an attempt to bring down to the level of the angels' understanding and say, oh, the reason why there's evil is number 1, number 2, number 3. No. Allah said to a species that is more intelligent than us, and more pure than us, and more noble than us, Allah said to them, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. You're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to trust me, because my knowledge is more than your knowledge, and my wisdom is more than your wisdom, and you will not understand why there is this pain and suffering. And so from the very beginning of creation, no, even before the beginning of creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you cannot understand fully why there is so much pain and suffering. You won't understand and rationalize why innocents are dying, being killed, starvation, hunger, earthquake, tsunami. It's not even a point to try to rationalize. And Allah in His infinite wisdom simply said, you're going to have to trust. And subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, from the beginning therefore, how you approach the question of evil and the wisdom of suffering, it goes back to who you are as a person. If you are a believer, if you are a believer in Allah, in a God, even other religions, then you will find wisdom and you will find some type of comfort and rationalization. Even if it's not fully there, because remember, you're never fully going to understand why there is pain and suffering in this world. In the next we will, in this world we won't. But if you don't have humility and faith, then when you are presented with evil, you will end up rejecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Iblis himself did. Either rejecting Allah's worship or rejecting Allah's existence. If you don't understand and you don't have humility, and this is Iblis, why would you choose another creation? Iblis said, I'm better. And Iblis did not have humility. Aba wastakbara, he had kibr. So the whole notion of understanding pain and suffering, it goes back first and foremost to how are you approaching the question? Are you approaching it with humility, or are you approaching it with arrogance? And if you have humility, then yes, you will find some wisdoms These wisdoms are not going to be watertight, foolproof. These wisdoms are not going to be something that a philosopher will say, khalas, everything is understood. No, because the human mind is limited in its capacity to understand. The human wisdom and the experience of humanity is limited. And the presumption that we can understand everything is an arrogant presumption. The presumption that everything needs to be rationalized by me before I believe in it is the essence of arrogance. And that's why when the believer approaches the question, the answer is very different than when a person of arrogance approaches the question. Allah